Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of The Underground. This week I want to talk about what has probably been the best thing I have ever developed for academic success. It's a present that I want to give to all of the seniors. I hope it's something that you can use in college. You might be able to use it on this Frankenstein essay. You could definitely use it on the Frankenstein essay, but you don't have to. And this is called the preemptive slacker method. I created the preemptive slacker method in a fit of desperation. When I went to college, I was a traditional slacker, and I'll talk about what that means in a little bit. I always waited until the last minute to do all of my work, and I basically, anytime I had an essay or a research paper due, I waited till the day it was due, or actually I didn't say the day it was due, the day before it was due, and then I just pulled an all-nighter. And between all the bands I was playing in, my lousy sleep schedule, and all these all-nighters that I pulled, my junior year I ended up getting mono, and it just leveled me. I got to the point where I really couldn't put more than a couple hours of work into school every day, and I had to figure out a way to get out of that situation. And when I got healthy, I made a few vows that I was going to do a better job with my time management and figure out some better systems for succeeding in college. And that's how this whole system was born. So, I want to start by talking about what my vision was of a straight A student when I was in high school, because I knew I didn't want to be that person. I wanted straight A's, I just didn't want to be the sort of student who got them, if that makes any sense. I wanted them to come into my lap, but I didn't want to actually have to have the personality that I thought went with it. So my vision, I thought that straight A students when I was in high school did all of their work weeks before it was due. I knew that that was never going to be me, that I couldn't do assignments that were on my assignment sheet but that hadn't been assigned yet before they were actually due. I don't know why I thought this. I don't think it's a thing that people actually do. I do know people work ahead. I do know smart people study. I do know that smart people don't wait till the last minute to do all of their work. But this idea that people would complete assignments that hadn't even been assigned yet, I think I was making stuff up in my head. I thought that was a thing. I thought that straight A students studied 5 hours every night, even if they didn't have tests coming up quickly. And I knew that I couldn't do that. I didn't have 5 hours to put into my studies every night. So I think I saw straight A students as always making this heroic effort, having a level of discipline that I knew I couldn't attain. I thought of straight A students as being goody two-shoes. I thought that they were just morally superior to everybody and were the sort of people who would say at the end of class, teacher, you forgot to assign us homework. Again, I've never met these people. I must have seen them on TV or something like that. I thought that straight A students were obsessive, and I didn't think that my personality was like that. Now I find that I really, really do care about detail. I really care about perfection. When I'm creating something, when I'm writing something. So I do sweat the details now, but when I was in high school, I didn't. I just kind of did what I felt like doing. And what else? I thought that straight A students were self-denying and joyless, that they pretty much lived for school, lived for having straight A's. And A's didn't mean that much to me. If I could have an A minus, B plus average and feel like I was happy, that was good enough for me. I didn't need to bring extra suffering into my life in order to have A's when I was in high school. And what else? I thought that what my parents wanted me to be was the type of straight A student that I imagined. And that's not actually who they wanted me to be. They wanted me to be the best reflection of myself that I could be. You know, they wanted me to be the person that God called me to be. But they weren't thinking of like, wow, I wish Will could be more of a Poindexter. Okay, so what I actually was a traditional slacker. So let me tell you about traditional slacking. The key thing for traditional slacking is procrastination. What I always thought when I was a traditional slacker was if something is due in a month, it would make sense to have 29 days of fun and then pay for it with 1 day of torture. Like I thought that was a good trade. So that was my usual modus operandi. I always thought that that was the way it should be done. That you try to enjoy all the time that you can, and then at the last minute you just make your life torture, but it's worth it, right? Mathematically speaking. The problem for that is that that doesn't really work out. That with traditional slacking, you end up with massive amounts of repressed guilt and anxiety. You maybe get 1 or 2 weeks out of that month where you're not too worried. And then you start realizing, wow, my friends are working on this and talking about how difficult it is, and I haven't even started it yet. So you repress that and you try to keep having fun. But are you actually even scheduling fun, or are you just sort of like hoping this fun's going to magically come to you? It generally doesn't, right? It's not just like, oh, I could just play some video games. I could text for a while. Like that time just disappears. It goes away. It's not all that valuable and meaningful. It's not the kind of stuff that you have memories about later in life. You might remember, oh, I had some fun times playing games with my friends, but you don't really remember the specific games. They blur into one giant blob of wasted time. So yeah, by the time you're a week out, you start really, really getting the anxiety, the panic. You also start thinking, wow, I'm a bad person, you know? So not only do you have to do this amazing feat of strength at the last minute, but you're going into it feeling like you are a failure and a bad human being. And that's not very useful. I used to think that if I wasn't typing, I wasn't working. So if I had an essay due, I thought that nothing really counted toward the work except for the actual typing of the essay. That the essay that I wasn't actually getting anywhere in the work unless I was actually creating the typed version of the essay. I found as a traditional slacker that I always needed to be in the zone when I was writing. That what I had to hope for was in that last 5-hour stretch before the paper was due, that somehow I would go into this magical zone and everything would click together and I'd be like Neo in the Matrix, you know, oh, I know Kung Fu suddenly, right? And I could write this amazing paper because I just was in the zone. And that was also my excuse for not writing papers earlier. Oh, I'm not in the zone yet. The zone for me pretty much always was desperation. What else do we have? Lack of editing. Because I used to hand everything in at the last second, I really didn't hand in edited, polished, perfected work. I handed in the best thing that I could come up with at the last minute. I was fortunate that I was a pretty good writer. But coming out of high school, going into college, I found that my high school writing skills, even though they were solid, were not up to what my professors wanted, that I couldn't just coast very easily in college. And really, I couldn't coast very easily in high school. It's just that the papers weren't as long. What else did I have to do? I didn't realize this when I was young, but traditional slacking means that you have to be an overachiever, right? It is very, very, very difficult to write an excellent paper at the last minute. We always think that we're underachievers because we're spending most of our time not working, but all that really means is that we're slacking, right? I always demanded that I was climbing Mount Everest when it came to writing something like a 10-page research paper in 8 hours without any sleep. That was a very, very difficult task. Preemptive slacking is all about making everything into very easy tasks. Okay. And ultimately what I found when I was blowing off all of this time that I could have been putting into work was that I was squandering a lot of time. That I really wasn't having these massive amounts of fun that I thought I was going to have. It was really just I kind of wasted a bunch of time, squandered a bunch of time, didn't have anything to show for the sacrifice I made by doing my essay at the last minute. I didn't get amazing work out of my essays, and all I could really say is that I got to watch more episodes of The Simpsons, big whoop, right? Or I read more comic books. It wasn't like I was, going on a road trip to discover the meaning of America or something like that in those extra 3 weeks that I squandered. Okay, so let's talk about the preemptive slacker method, the one that I learned junior year. I guess it was actually my first senior year of college. So tail end of junior year, beginning of senior year, I had this brainstorm of a way that I could change the way I wrote research papers. And once I embraced this method, before I had been something like a 3.5, 3.6 student, I had a mix of A's and B's and A minuses, and I was pretty happy with that. But once I started using this method, it's not only that I got A pluses in everything that I did from that point on, it's not only that like I became a 4-point student for the first time in my life, it's also that, I don't know a great way to explain this, and it'll sound kind of arrogant, but it's because of this system and it's because of the discipline. It's not because of my raw intellect or my innate gifts or anything like that. It is really just having a strategic system in place. I got to the point where I would hand in essays and professors would ask me if they could write me letters of recommendation, or they talk about programs that they thought that I'd be interested in. I stopped even worrying about A's. I started worrying about, am I handing in the best thing that I possibly can? Is it something that I actually want to put my name on? So the A, where it used to feel like this goal I was trying to attain, the A was now down here, and I was aiming at something that was really up here, so far beyond the A that there wasn't really a question of whether I was going to get an A anymore. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because it's what I want for you guys. I want you to create exceptional work. I don't want you just to worry about some number that you get that doesn't really mean anything. At the end of it, has your essay accomplished something meaningful and important, right? Have you opened up some new ground in people's thinking? Have you made a meaningful statement about the text that you've read? Or have you helped people think about reality differently than they normally do, right? These are the bigger goals to aim toward. Okay, so preemptive slacking, things I like about it. Number one, I started prioritizing the things that I love doing. So a big part about college is classes are amazing. I loved classes. Learning is amazing, but a lot of your learning is not just in the classroom. It's really useful to spend time with people from all over the country or all over the world. It's very important to get to Mass. It's very important to expand your horizons, go see some art movies, to take on new projects, join clubs. I would usually be in 4 or 5 bands at a time, right? I really grew as a musician. I had friends who were into film who were constantly shooting their own student films. All of this kind of stuff. You really get to tailor what you're doing to your personal gifts and expand those gifts and expand your horizons. And that stuff's all very important. So I found with preemptive slacking, what started happening was that I prioritized the things that I loved doing, that I was actually scheduling important, meaningful stuff, and I was squeezing my work in around that. One thing about preemptive slacking is that thinking is working. Thinking is working. I used to think that only working, like typing the paper, was working, but I came up with a system for actually capturing my thoughts and arranging them so that every day I could see what sort of progress I was making in my essays, right? With this giant outline that I'll show you in a little bit. Any kind of thought work I had, as long as I was capturing those thoughts and getting them onto my outline, I was preserving them and advancing the paper. When I was a traditional slacker, I would try to hold all these ideas in my head and hope that they would come out in the paper. I started getting into just organizing these ideas as they came to me, and I could see the progress that I was doing every day in my paper. I found that there was no need for the zone. that putting in 20 to 30 minutes every day, very casually, and capturing the work that I was doing made it so that I didn't need the zone. I didn't need 20 different elements to come together because I was placing those elements perfectly on a daily basis into something that was going to be an amazing tapestry of an essay. So, yeah, the zone just wasn't even a thing anymore. What else? Preemptive slacking meant that I had tons of time for editing, that I was never racing against a deadline, and I could finish my essay a day or two in advance. That would give me a lot of time to edit. The way I was working on my ideas by putting them into an outline meant that I was doing a lot of preemptive editing, that before I even started typing the essay, the arrangement of my ideas was already perfect. It was already solid. It had already made excellent sense. I didn't have to worry about trying to tie loose threads together in the moment. It wasn't an improvisational exercise. I was composing as opposed to improvising. What else? I found that preemptive slacking meant that I could have a more sane, relaxed pace of life. That the real goal here was to underachieve, to do a little bit every day, and to do it intelligently and do it well the first time. And then what that meant was that I didn't have the stress, I didn't have the guilt, I didn't start thinking bad things about myself. If anything, I started feeling like I was a successful, accomplished person who was making headway every day, even if the paper wasn't written. So that felt really good. That was self-empowering, this idea that I could actually achieve on a level that I never had thought I could achieve at before. The guilt, the anxiety, they go away. Because every day I am doing something. Every day I'm enjoying myself, and every day I am I'm working toward the essay, right? So there isn't any guilt. My constant feeling is I can see the progress that I'm making, and I can see that I'm going to meet the deadline without any real issues. So the anxiety goes away. I feel like a good person. I feel like I'm successful as a person. I feel like I'm accomplishing something. And I don't have to worry about this impending doom of having to have this 8-hour crisis of trying to create an essay right before class happens. And then the last thing, really just in general, you don't waste any time, which means you maximize the fun that you're having, the things that you really care about in college. Okay, so what is this method? Let's transition. So here is the way of the preemptive slacker. Rule number 1, use garbage time for work, use quality time for fun. Use garbage time for work, use quality time for fun. So what does that mean? First of all, garbage time would be the time that you can't use for anything better. Sometimes we get these little chunks of time that are in between better things happening, right? So maybe you have a half-hour gap between classes. That's not really going to be enough time to go back to your room. It's not going to be enough time to spend a bunch of time with friends or anything like that. That's really a perfect time to read a couple chapters of a book and take some notes. One thing I always found was that I had a tendency to wake up early Saturday mornings in college for some reason. I'd get kind of excited for the day, and maybe I'd wake up early in college means like 8 or 9. So I might wake up 8 or 9 o'clock, and really everybody is asleep until about noon. So there's no one I can go hang out with. There's not really anything happening. That's several hours of time that I can't go spend with friends. I can't go to the movies, can't go play with any bands, any of that kind of stuff. I can do work right then. And doing the work right then is going to mean that I don't have to do the work later, which means I'm not going to have to cut into other things that I love. So, what is quality time? Quality time would be these nice, massive amounts of time, like 3 or 4 hour blocks where you can have a visit from your parents, where you can go see some friends, where you can go to a concert, you can go check out a movie, you can go to a party, but be responsible. You can, really engage in things that you love to do and that are helping you grow into the adult that you want to be. So Yeah, think about quality time as the time that you just really want to do what you love doing. Think about garbage time as these small little blocks of time where you can squeeze in the work that you need to do for these big research papers. Second rule, thinking is working. One of my big issues that would keep me from writing essays in the past was that I would start getting ideas and I felt like I had to manage them all in my head. And this would sometimes keep me, while I was struggling with them in my head, I couldn't quite get them out onto paper yet. And what I started doing with preemptive slacking was to write down all of these ideas and try to work with them on a giant outline. And so what I'd see every day is that my thoughts were moving toward the completion of an essay. So instead of my thoughts being this barrier to creating an essay where I thought I just had to store them all up and then they would come out in this perfect moment of essay writing where I'd either succeed or fail. Instead, what I got to see is that if I just captured my thoughts and got them on an outline, if I captured all the work that I did, got it on this giant outline, that at the end of it, all of that thought was work that paid off toward the completion of the essay. So yeah, capture your thoughts well, and you'll feel like you're working, and you'll see that you are having results toward your essay. Third rule, a great essay consists of 90% thinking and 10% typing. When I was a traditional slacker, I thought the typing was the thinking. I thought it was the whole thing. When you complete your giant outline with all of your thoughts, all of your quotes, everything that you want on it, then really you've done all the thinking, you've arranged all the thinking, you've captured all of the ideas, and all you really need to do then is type the essay. And you don't even need to type the essay all at once. You can type a page here, type a page there. So very little composing goes into the actual typing process under the preemptive slacker method. You do have to worry about style, you do have to worry about grammar, but these are things that you keep on improving the more you write. So after a while, all that really means is you fix some of that stuff in the editing and you develop a nice native skill to write well anyways. So 90% of the essay should be thinking, especially if you want to create something really fantastic, right? It's really capturing the thoughts. It's not about typing the paper. Typing the paper is the last thing you do. Literally, it's the last thing that you do. Okay, so the next rule, do things right the first time to reduce your workload. When I was a traditional slacker, I was very sloppy about the work that I did toward my essays. And what that meant was I frequently had to do the work several times. Let's say I went and grabbed 20 books from the library and I read through 10 of them and I folded over, the corners instead of taking notes, or I misplaced books. If I misplaced a book or I couldn't find the quotes that I had to use, then I ended up spending a lot of time trying to find those quotes again. If I misplaced the book, then I couldn't even use the work that I did because I didn't have it anymore. Or I'd have to dig through my room trying to figure out where the book went, all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes I thought it was easier to read my books lying down right before bed. The problem there is that reading makes me sleepy and I would fall asleep and maybe miss the quotes that I found, or maybe just dream quotes that weren't even there. Maybe I would put a bookmark into a book instead of writing down my quote, and then I'd pick up the book and the bookmarks would fall out. All of that kind of stuff. What I got really good at is just carrying around some note cards or some post-it notes. And anytime I found a quote that I thought might be useful, I would just write it right down. And then as soon as I got home, if I wasn't home, I would just stick it where it belonged on the outline. At one point, I even started putting the works cited information on the back of the quotes. And that way, when I was done with the outline, I could just pull everything off the outline and flip the cards over, alphabetize them, and there was my works cited. So that's probably the cleverest I got with this whole system. But yeah, if you do everything right the first time, if you get the quotes and you cite them correctly and then you move on, then you don't need to do that work again. You're not going to have to dig around to find where your quotes were. You're not going to have to look at all these dog-eared pages. You're not going to highlight in library books, which is very unethical. Yeah, just do things right the first time, which my traditional slacker self never wanted to do. But once I learned to do it right the first time, I was like, wow, I just cut out several hours of this whole routine just by doing things correctly. What else? You have to synergize with your issues, right? Know what kind of a person you are and tailor the system to fit who you are. I knew that when I was in college, when I was in my room, that any shiny thing was going to distract me. Um, if I was supposed to be working on an essay, but I saw an old comic book that I loved, I'd read the comic book. If I was uh, supposed to work on an essay, but I saw, a friend's phone number, I might give my friend a call instead of doing my work. Really, almost anything would turn into a distraction. So what I decided was the last rule: use a battle board. Um, this distractibility, I knew that my mind wandered to whatever I was looking at, so I created the battle board. Let's talk about the battle board. Here you can see I actually have several battle boards lined up. These are battle boards that I made for this, uh, the lockdown basically. These are how I've been like planning out my schedules. I've adapted the preemptive slacker method to work for class planning in the state of emergency that we're in. But right here is kind of a blank battle board. Now, why did I create gigantic outlines like this? I knew that if I had this by my bed in my dorm room, that I would distract myself into thinking about my essay. And thinking is working. So if I'm accidentally thinking about my essay and I write a few things down and I stick them on the outline, then I have done work. This tendency I have to be distracted and to just let my mind wander, I could synergize with that. My mind would wander right to the essay. I would think of something interesting and useful for it. I'd get that on there, and that 10 minutes before bed while I'm wondering, just thinking about my day, there it goes, right? And then I could say my prayers and I'm good. So, for the battle board, I like to get giant rolls of paper. You can get these for like $10 over at Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards. This is just I think this is like called contractor's paper or something like that. You can also just get any kind of roll of paper. You can get a poster board. I've had students in the past who get cork boards or dry erase boards so that they can reuse them. That's totally fine. It's really whatever is going to be gigantic and whatever you like. Make sure that you like what you're using. Now, I usually get a bunch of Post-it notes these days. In college, I used note cards, and I liked note cards because they were sturdy. They fit into books really well. I could write something on the front and write something on the back really easily. Like I could write my quote on the front and then write my works cited info on the back. And then when I was done, I could just pull everything off of here and flip them over, alphabetize them, and make my works cited page. So, I like Post-it notes nowadays because they're so easy to move. When I use note cards, I usually had to tape them, and then you have to pull up the tape and move them around, and sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. Some people I know use cork boards, and then they'll use index cards, and they'll just use thumbtacks, and that works really well too. So whatever you feel like doing. But the key thing is it should be big, it should distract you into thinking about your essay, and it needs to have enough room on it so that you can do whatever you need to toward your essay. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is write my thesis across the top. And then for each one of these, whatever my first topic is, I put that topic there. Don't write topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. This is just a generic one. Write whatever your topic sentence is. If you don't yet know what your topic sentence is, write a key word from your topic sentence. Like, maybe if you were talking about Victor Frankenstein, Mary Shelley using Victor Frankenstein as a critique of the Enlightenment, maybe here you would have scientific narcissism or something like that as a topic. And you don't know exactly what you're going to do with it yet, but you could just write scientific narcissism and that would work. Now, as you come to understand what your topic sentence is, at that point, you could just put it on a Post-it note or two right by your topic, and this gives you some freedom to rewrite your topic sentences. Let's say I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden I get this great idea for a hook. Oh, great, I will put that underneath my thesis. Sweet. And each day I'm pulling out 2 or 3 quotes as I'm reading, any quotes that I find interesting. I can stick them on whatever topics I think are useful. So I outlined 6 body paragraphs here plus the conclusion. If I think about some info that I want to have in my conclusion, some kind of like closing idea, I just put a quote, or I put my note card over there. And basically every day that I'm working on my paper, I am just populating this thing, right? I did 6 topics here because this would be about like a 7 or 8 page paper in college. For you guys, you'd have 3 topics because you're just doing a 5-paragraph essay for me. The beautiful thing about the AQA system that I've shown you is that you can expand it into anything that your professors want from you. So let's say they just want a 1-page reflection paper. That's an intro, 3 AQAs, each in their own paragraph, and 1 concluding sentence or a short conclusion. If your professors say they want a 3 to 4 page paper, then you do what you've been doing for 5-paragraph essays. If they say they want more like a 7 to 8, go with 6 topics, right? In each of these paragraphs, you put 2 or 3 different AQAs. I tended to go with 3 AQAs in college. It's not any harder for you than the 2 that you've been doing. It just means adding 1 more. Let's say you need to write a 10-pager. That's probably going to be 9 topics, which you could then think about as 3 5-paragraph essays minus the extra intros and conclusions, right? So you could use 3 body paragraphs to prove your first idea, 3 to prove your second, 3 to prove your third, or you could just think about it in terms of 9 different body paragraphs, 9 central ideas that are going to defend your thesis. Take that idea and multiply it by 10, and that would give you 10 chapters to a book, and you could write a 100-page dissertation that way. So the AQA form, it's your basic molecule for all of this. That we've been very strategic in teaching you that concept. It always works well for defending ideas. And for anyone who's not over at St. Francis, argument quote analysis. You put your argument first, then you support it with a quote, and then you defend the assertion that you've made in a few sentences of analysis afterwards. Okay, so every day I am finding quotes that I think are useful. By the way, let me talk to you about one other thing. Top down versus bottom up. What I'm showing you guys right now is a top down approach. This would be, I already know what my thesis is, and I already know what my topic sentences are, so all I need to do is populate my outline. But let's say you're doing this a different way. Let's say that you kind of understand, I'm really interested in this subject in the book, but I don't know what the author is all about. I don't know what I'm really going to find as I dig into this topic, but you know what the topic is. Then what I would do is collect a bunch of quotes that are on this topic, and I would sort them into categories. And as you start seeing categories, look for those concepts. And you can have your topics up here as categories, start sticking them in here. And as you read through the quotes and think about what all the critics are saying and what the author is saying, at that point your thesis may come to you, right? You may have an idea about what everything means, and then you make your statement of significance up here in your thesis, and you work it into your topic sentences, and basically you let all of the evidence guide the creation of the thesis instead of starting with the thesis and then finding the support. Either way is good. It's just top down or bottom up. This system works either way, right? Okay, so what do I like about this? Well, let's say I'm going through here and I'm like, oh wait, this happens before that happens. I'll just move that there. let's say topic 2, I'm up to 5 quotes, but in topic 3, I only have 2. Oh, look at this. This one right here would also work for topic 3. Yay, I'm perfect. Worked out. Oh, and this paragraph's going to be way too long. Well, this is probably my weakest one here. Oh, look at that. I can stick that in topic 5. Woohoo, awesome. So you will get to the point where you have all of the quotes that you need for your essay. And depending on your personality here, for me, having the quotes was enough for me to create my arguments and my analysis as I was creating the essay. If I had a special point that I wanted to make, I might put that into the outline in a different color. Maybe I throw in some analysis right next to my support. Oh, I like this idea. I'm going to put something right there. What you could do is for each one of these quotes, you could write out your argument in front of it after you have it. And then you could write out your analysis. Spread these out a little bit more. Right. So if you were to do that, you could write out your whole essay just on this outline. And literally all you would have to do is type it and edit it after you are done. You could, if you wanted to, create the entire essay right here and then just go and type it. Nice thing about that would be that you're already kind of editing it as you type it because you're going from your handwritten ideas to a more polished, refined typewritten concept. You don't have to do that. I usually was fine just putting the quotes on here and knowing what to do. Any kind of concept you want to work toward, any sort of idea you want to have, it doesn't matter if it's a quote or not, you just stick it on here. Color code if you want to. I think color coding helps. You can see here on my schedules that I've built out. I have blue for homework. I've got orange for videos that I want to create. I've got red or pink for big assignments that are due. So yeah, I finished this out. Every day I see that I'm making progress in my essay. That makes me feel like it's fine for me to go out and have some fun because I did something here. Every day this looks really impressive. I don't know, I'm also kind of a nerd. I like that this just seems like I'm going to war and my strategy's coming together and I'm succeeding, right? This takes away a lot of my stress. It takes away a lot of my anxiety. It also means I don't have to hold all of this in my head, which is what I always tried to do before. And I thought I was gonna have to scramble to put all these things together. I don't really have to do that scrambling. It's just all here. Woohoo, I love it. So, you can apply this to many things. I have former students who have applied this to chore charts, who use it for scheduling. I've had lots of students use this all the way through college for writing research papers. It really works well for that in any sort of subject. Sky's the limit. It's not that hard of a concept. It's not like I was amazing for coming up with it, but I'm so thankful that that this idea did come to me. I think without it, I don't think I would have turned into I wouldn't have reached the level of scholarliness that I eventually attained through my last couple years of college and through grad school. This really, really works well at helping you come up with your best work imaginable. It sorts out so many issues, not the least of which is your anxiety. It is so much easier than traditional slacking. I can't tell you what a sigh of relief it is to do this. You get much better work than you normally do. It takes less effort than you normally have to exert. It's almost stress-free. It becomes kind of fun. It feels a lot like playing a game. Because you see the progress that you're making. It's kind of like I'm leveling up every time I can fill part of an area with my quotes. So I highly recommend it. I think it'll help you guys a lot in college. If you want to practice it on Frankenstein, I'm happy to help you through it. AP Lit, thanks for watching this also. I know right now that we're more worried about trying to crank out free response 2 in under 45 minutes and that this won't be that helpful to you yet. but I think all of you can just create mind-blowingly exceptional work if you apply this one in college. So I'm very, very excited for all of you. Sorry we're ending the year this way, but I hope this is a good parting gift. And thanks for joining me in the underground.